Hello, and welcome to the W.A.I.T channel. What Am I Thinking? A podcast where two sisters share uplifting conversations on fun and sometimes serious topics.
Join us each week by clicking the notification bell and subscribing to our channel. If you enjoy the show, use the share link. It's one of the best ways to expand the conversation.
Welcome to the W.A.I.T channel. What am I thinking? Today's topic is a look back. A look back to 10 years ago, which is hard to believe that it's been 10 years since the murder of Trayvon Martin. That loss birthed a lot of things and gave a lot of people some things to think about. And it was kind of a little shocking for us as a country and a wake-up call in some ways. We learned about Stand Your Ground in the state of Florida. But I think the biggest thing that we learned, we saw hoodies in a whole different way for African-American men. And I know that it was a situation as being the mother of an African-American male, that conversations that I thought I would never have to have, that began a new precipice of conversations for parents of African-American young men. So it birthed the mothers of the movement, other mothers who have lost their children in tragic ways and unnecessary loss. But at the same time, we're at a point where some progress has been made. So let's first kind of talk about 10 years ago and seeing the images and hearing the conversations, the things that came about. Even President Obama, who was president at the time, saying if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. You know, when you think back on that time, what comes to mind for you?
You know, sadly, because since that time, so many lives have been taken, senselessly taken in the same way Trayvon's life has been taken. And the 10-year anniversary, when it came, it felt to me like it was just yesterday. Because I still could not accept the fact that a person just on their way home, dressed in a hoodie, in a neighborhood where someone felt he should not have been, but that's where his mom lived.
His dad
lived. And to have another person decide that you are a threat to them, even though you don't do anything to them, and to lose your life.
A whole new look at neighborhood watch, right?
And then, I mean, you know, it's like even that Stand Your Ground law in Florida, you would think that the state would have looked at that and realized maybe we need to make some amendments, because since then there have been other deaths with this same law. It's
sad.
And
we got introduced to Ben Crump at that time. And he has helped a whole lot of other people with their cases to try to get justice. And I think the sad part for a lot of people with this case is that they don't feel like there was ever any justice for Trayvon.
It wasn't, and I think that when you ask me that question, that's part of the reason I have not processed it, because it was something that I think was senseless. And even though there was a court case and there was a ruling, in my mind, I see Lady Justice and her eyes are closed. I see the scale, but the scale is not balanced.
It's not.
And I have no resolution with that, because I can't have resolution with someone's life being taken because of an unjust law, and a person who, by the way, tried to sue the family for $100 million.
Wow.
Yeah, I have not come to terms with it. And I don't know that I ever will, because a person is not here who probably should be here.
Yeah.
We have no idea what his life would have been, who he would have impacted, what he would have achieved.
Yeah. So he would have been 27, and George Zimmerman was all of 28.
Wow.
When this happened.
Wow. Yeah, that's telling.
That's very telling.
That's very telling. Mm-hmm.
And so it's a big loss, and that was when Black Lives Matter movement started for those young ladies that started that movement. And whether you believe in everything that they're doing or not, it is a powerful movement.
It's like, as you say, that there's a TV series on the Gilded Age, and there is a character, Peggy, and just getting an insight. When we see her, we know that the Emancipation Proclamation, it had not occurred very many years after her birth, and how she's making her way in life. And to look at 100 years, 100 plus years later, the fight is still on. Peggy walking down a sidewalk and standing there talking to her father, and they have to move out of the way because these white people are standing there refusing to move and walk around them. That's like Trayvon walking down that street.
Right. Yeah.
And being denied the right
to
walk down the street.
Yeah. Come so far, but haven't come far at all.
We haven't.
And I think it's those type of things that makes me want to tell people to read, learn, remember. It doesn't benefit us to forget history, and to forget the fight that we're still in.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
I think that is the reason we are still in the fight, because when we have a system that wants to keep us apathetic and pacified, they water down our history and sanitize it, and they remove things because they want us to feel good about ourselves as a country. Now they can hype up everybody else's history and make them look bad. But when you sanitize it, you lose the truth. You lose that emotion that should be a part of history, that should fire something up in you to want change and to not want to go backwards. I think that's what we're seeing today. And for a race that has been so persecuted over the years, the fact that we've had the progress and made the wins that we have, imagine, because I think about the ones who, that Black Wall Street story from Oklahoma. And imagine if they had not been wiped out, and there are more stories like that about Black communities who were progressing. I was watching one of the reality shows, and it was something about a community in Atlanta. It was, I can't think of the name of it that the young lady said, but she talked about her grandfather being a part of that community and how it was so esteemed, but how
it was destroyed because of hatred of the progress that they were making, and even with somebody's foot on your back, on your neck, on your, you still, think about that grass blade or that flower pushing through the concrete. That's what a lot of Black people did.
Right.
Even when everything was stacked against them, they still were thriving, only to be knocked down yet again.
It's like this oxymoron. You told me to get out there and do my own, to build my own. I did it, but you persecuted me for doing it.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. So it's a sad thing, but let's talk about some progress that has been made. Let's talk about the 2 civil rights cases. The one against the 3 other officers in the George Floyd case, being found guilty. And then the 3, the ones in the Ahmaud Arbery case, getting guilty verdicts there. And then I'm not sure where that officer was who stated that she mistook her gun for her taser. That case, which I apologize for not knowing the victim's name off the top, but she was found guilty. However, her sentencing was very light, to say the least, for a loss of life.
Right.
And the judge justified it by saying because it was an accident in the midst of her doing her job. So I'm sure there are a plethora of cases where someone was in the midst of doing their job and something went awry.
Yeah.
And somebody died.
With hers, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, but the thing that resonates with me most is how she interjected herself in a situation that she didn't have to. She was supposed to be with her orientee. She could have just stood back and talked to her orientee. Look, see how he's talking to him. Look, see how he's getting him out of the car. Now, I would have done blah, blah, blah. But that's not what happened.
Right.
She jumped out and she interjected herself in a situation that escalated when she put herself in between the door, that steering wheel, and him sitting in that seat.
But let's say he did get out of the car and run and flee. This was not a crime.
Right.
I remember having a conversation with my son about, he had one of his classes is where they kind of talk about different current event topics, and one was about law enforcement and felons is what they called it. But really, it was, to me, the verbiage was about law enforcement and people of color, but the way it was worded. But and it was saying, how do people get their opinions and what they feel? And we talked about it, and I said, don't you think it's probably their experience with them or the interactions they see other people who look like them have with them? And I said, that's a big part of how that happens. And so I went through some of the cases with him and talked about, and when I talked about the Philando Castile one in, I believe it was in Minnesota or Missouri. I think it was in Minnesota, and talked about the fact that it was a traffic stop for brake light. The third brake light being out in the vehicle is what he got pulled over for. And he was like, for a traffic stop, somebody will lose their life? I said, yes, for a traffic stop. And somebody actually telling them, I have a permit to carry, and I'm letting you know that my gun is in here, but I'm not. If he was going to actually shoot the officer, why announce that you have
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And it freaked the officer out. It really did.
I think in this situation, and the the difficult thing in navigating this is that I understand and I recognize the position and situation police officers are in when they have to use
heightened.
Yeah, but when they have to use a gray area to get their job done. And originally it was that gray area where I know who you are, I know I need to get you, but I got to create a reason to get you. But they've taken it now and they're using it to harass, to what is it called when they choose a person for a specific reason? Like oh dear,
it's escaping me. Profiling.
Profiling, yes, right. So
racial profiling.
Racial specifically, yes. So now you have this situation where if you are a certain race, you're fearful to even pull over.
Right.
Because you know that one simple thing can escalate to something, even if you don't, did I not say officer right?
Right.
Did I not show them the right type of respect? You don't know.
Right. It's a difficult position to be in. I heard a statistic that there was when the Republican was mayor of New York City. I can't think of his name off the top. The one who ended up running as a Democratic person, I believe it. I think it was him. No, or it might have been Giuliani. I don't remember. I think it might have been I think it was when Giuliani was mayor. Yes, it was. That there was a stat that came out that they pulled over more African American men than the number of stops that they made was more than the number of African American male citizens that they had in New York City.
That is unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Yes. So you want to say you had a target? Yeah, you definitely did. So, but in that situation, at least she was found guilty, the officer, even though we might not be pleased with the time she was sentenced to, but she was found guilty. So those small victories, we definitely have to, take those in and have a hope that we can move beyond it and have even more victories down the road. So 10 years since Trayvon Martin, we've gotten some guilty verdicts. But the sad part is we're still having the loss of life. And as you said, in such a senseless manner and in ridiculous situations that should not require someone to have to die. So I get police officers, their role. As I said, I was trained in the military with auxiliary security force, and grateful that I never had to pull my weapon in a situation like that. I get it. But also, after going through that experience, I also knew law enforcement was not for me. And it's like sometimes we have to, and somebody made a great point, and that we're going to close out on this topic here in a minute, but they talked about if the individuals, and they were talking about it as related to the courts, and they talked about how for so long in our country that court system was seen through the lens of Caucasian men. So when you are trying to interpret and say what is just for law, you're seeing it through your life experience and your lens, not through the lens of someone who, I think it was Maya Wiley, who said that she was trying a case. She was an African-American female. It was on the prosecutor's side, and there was also an African-American female attorney on the defense side. And they were both in suits. And the judge from the bench, a Caucasian male, says, get those attorneys for these cases in here. I don't want to be waiting on them. They should be in here. And they were already there.
OMG.
So if you can't even see them
Yeah.
as someone who could be in those positions, you know, if you haven't lived in a situation where someone sees you as less than who you are just because of the color of your skin, how can you be a jurist to be able to, your lens is totally different.
That would be myopic, right?
Yes. And so that's why it's so important to have the court look like the world that it is making these decisions related to. Yeah. That's why the police force needs to look like the communities that they're policing, because the lens through which you see things matters. And that's why you can't compartmentalize yourself off in a world where everybody looks just like you. And that goes for all sides. That's not just for people who are Caucasian, but it's for people of color as well.
It makes me feel like we literally, with all our advances, are no further than the cavemen. Our mindset, we're not advancing. And my son said it best yesterday. There's this dumbing down that continues to occur. It's right in front of our eyes, and it's like we're not doing anything. We see it happening.
And a lot of that is because people are satisfied to hear the news and believe the news without doing any vetting, any other further reading, without allowing themselves to gain any more information. They just take it as face value, as the gospel. And we know you got to study to show yourself approved. You gotta learn things for yourself. And because, you know, a lot of people just don't want to take the time to do it. And the internet is a big part of that problem.
It's a huge
because if they see it on the internet, once again, they think it's true.
They think it's true.
And they're, you know, and I talk to people so much about, you know, when it comes to science and medical stuff, if it's not from a peer-reviewed, researched article, you can't give it that credibility, you know, but they just go ahead and take it for granted. So that'll send me off on a whole nother tangent. So as we close out this topic of our 10-year look back, some progress has been made, not nearly enough. And there's a whole lot of injustice that we're still having to live with. But organizations like Mothers of the Movement are doing their part to try to continue to make a difference. But we got a long way to go.
Yes. And we invite you to be a part of that conversation. Leave your comments. Remember to be kind. And we look forward to talking to you next time. Bye-bye.